WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. We Should Know is on there. We're coming to you from Star Communications, Channel 16, also WCLN Radio simulcast with a summation of the Sampson Weekly newspaper. We're talking about things agriculture today. We're talking about things that grow all around us. We're talking about two people that knows a bit about that. And Eileen Coite is the County Extension Director for Corporate Extension here in the county. Eileen, your background is in livestock, believe it or not, and you came over here. We actually stole you from Goldsboro and Wayne County area.
That's correct.
That was pretty smooth on our part, I believe.
Well, I'm glad you think so.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Brad, I want to thank you for being back with us. You've been on in the past, and of course you grew up in agriculture, resident of Sampson County, and basically spent your entire life dealing with ag, somewhat like a lot of people here. And of course, you've ended up now with Corporate Extension, and you focus in one of those areas that's called small farms, on large commercial farms, as well as work with the North Carolina Department of Ag and a lot of their commercial programs. As now you're responsible for consumer and commercial horticulture operations in Sampson County. That is so huge now that folks really don't understand. I mean, I know some people, and I'm sure we could start calling names, but it's in turf grass and all this kind of thing. That's a huge agriculture industry. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, JW. I'm glad to be here. And like Eileen, I was stolen from Wayne County too. I grew up here in Sampson, and spent my whole life on the farm. And when I got a public job, the first public job was with the Department of Agriculture in Wayne County. So I knew Eileen from Wayne County, and I guess our connection there brought me back home to Sampson County, and I'm just glad to be back in Sampson.
Well, over the years, even Eileen, before you came here, I got to know a lot of folks and have known a lot of folks with Corporate Extension, highly respected organization, very education-based, as we, I think, will agree. And it's the go-to point for people when they have something happen and they're going, what in the world just happened here? And they go to you guys to say, okay, what do I do? What's the science behind it? And I suspect sometime in the past, I recall talking to some folks probably 15, 20 years ago, and they would scratch their head and look at me and go, now there's times I really don't know what's going on myself. So ag is an evolving industry. Would you agree with that?
Very much so.
Yeah, all the time. Research going on. We're learning different things, new species of insects we're finding, new species of plants, the new hybrids that are coming out, the new cultivars of plants. You know, everything doesn't grow the same anymore. GMOs, you know, people talk about those. That's a hot topic now. So new chemical formulations to help fight some of these things. So it's always evolving, always research going on, and you never stop learning.
One of the things that Brad mentioned was the GMOs, and along with that, you see a lot of that in the grocery stores. And before we went on air, we were just talking about it. And a lot of times I like to go to the grocery store and I walk around and I see these labels that say organically grown or no GMO and all that kind of thing.
Antibiotic free.
Antibiotic free, and particularly in livestock, particularly in vegetables and those kinds of things. The interesting part of that, when I see that, quite frankly, it always kind of catches you at the cash register because it's usually more. What kind of explain what's going on in the world of both livestock and in growing vegetables and plants that is so important about GMOs and organically grown? What does all that mean? I'll start with either one of them.
I'll start, and then Brad can fix anything that or anything I leave out. But you know, it's all about marketing, of course, and we all want to be healthy. So when we think of things like we want our meat to be antibiotic free, you know, society has a tendency to be scared of some things like GMOs, and you know, it doesn't mean that GMOs are not all bad. You know, there's things that we do to plants, and again, it's more his area to talk about the plants, but to make them healthier and grow better, and you know, but when you talk about organics, you know, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to be organic certified. And I'm not saying that organic, if you want to buy all organic food, There's nothing wrong with that. But what I want people to know is that's not saying that if there's food out there that's not organic or, you know, is GMO, or it doesn't mean that that's all bad. And when you talk about the antibiotic-free side of things, or maybe the grass-fed and all that, all of our meat is antibiotic-free. Now, there may be some chicken out there, some beef out there where that animal was treated with an antibiotic because they got sick, but we have what's called withdrawal times. And there's a period of time that that farmer has to wait before that animal is harvested and before that meat ends up in the grocery store where that antibiotic is gone. So, you know, but the difference is on an antibiotic-free type situation, you can't even treat that animal. You know, so you would just, they probably are never gonna, if they get real sick, they probably are never gonna end up in the grocery store anyway.
They may then infect the rest of the herd if they're sick, and that creates additional issues and problems. Of course, when I grew up on the farm, we used to soak corn and then give that to hogs, and that was pretty much it. And now that we got all this other industry where everything is prepackaged and bring it with a truck and dump it in, and it's cell feeders and all that. So the livestock industry's changed radically.
Yes, yes.
And to that, Brad, I think about that somehow the plant foods have gotten to feed the livestock. So when we get into organic or GMO, that becomes critically important as people think about that. If that's something that really bothers them, they might want to dig a little bit deeper, had they not? Yeah,
they should. And there, like Eileen said, it's a lot of marketing. That's a big part of it. But just one horticultural crop, I'll just speak about with GMOs. Let's talk about a pecan. There's thousands of pecan trees here in Sampson County, yard trees, people growing them in their yards. We have several large orchards here, and we've got a lot of small orchards growing. So pecans is a growing industry here in Sampson County. And if you look at the life of a pecan tree from a research aspect, if we're trying to get a better pecan tree, one that is more resistant to scab, which is the major disease of pecans, it takes, from a researcher, 7 years just to start that tree from a seed to get it to nut producing. Now, if we're trying to select a cultivar for that, so you take thousands of trees, set them out in a plot. Through natural selection, you pick out the best pecan cultivars that there is. You may get 10 out of those 1,000. Then you take those 10, then you go plant them out in a research plot. Then you're looking at 7 more years of those 10 and evaluating those 10 trees that started out of the initial 7. So now you're at 14 years. Then once you get those 10 evaluated, then you're going to put them in an actual production type setting. So you're looking at 7 more years. So you're almost at 21 years before you're finally saying this tree may be valuable enough that we can recommend it for production. But then you've got to take that tree and start grafting it to get your numbers up to sell it. You're looking at 30 years from the time you select that cultivar until the time you can tell a grower that, hey, this is a good cultivar. You can take a GMO, which this isn't happening yet, but theoretically, you could go in there and actually select in the DNA those traits for scab resistance out of those good trees that are scab resistant, place it in some of these newer trees, and you can cut that time in half where you're going from these trees we're researching to telling a producer that, hey, this is a tree that you can recommend to plant and you can get good nuts off of. So in the horticulture industry, it's really a time thing for a pecan tree. And does it hurt anything? It just cuts down some of those natural selection processes that take so long and goes down to the DNA level to where you can actually insert some of those genes from one into another tree.
But it doesn't affect anything as it relates to the consumability of that or any dangers in the consumability. And a lot of folks, not a lot of folks, but there are groups that would say you don't want to do that because it's been genetically modified, so therefore that genetically modified tree is going to cause you all these kind of horrific diseases down the road. So that sounds like a lot of hype that folks don't need to be concerned about.
Right, I would agree with you, but I would also say that there's still research that needs to be conducted on that, just to ensure for the public that everything is safe for the public. Of course, we put out a safe product anyhow with all the research that's going on in the food system.
I'm glad you mentioned pecan trees because that was something I wanted to follow up on anyway. I've noticed and I'm always, when I'm moving through this county or even Wayne County or any of the counties, particularly in eastern North Carolina, I'm looking for things that I didn't really see before. And now I've started seeing a lot of pecan trees, and it just seems like to me I've seen fields with 50, I've seen some with 30, I've seen some, looks like maybe it was 100 there. Is there a push or a need for more nut trees to be, should I say, planted, and the future for nuts, at least according to LB Powers, is pretty strong. So I'll put it like that. LB's been on the show, and for folks that don't know who LB Powers is, just look up the Nut House and you'll find him. He's a big pecan promoter, and I know you know LB. So.
Yeah, I work with LB, and I've worked with him with his farm, especially during some of the hurricanes. He lost some of his trees during those hurricanes, but you're right. The market is slowly expanding for pecans right now. The big push for pecans is during the holiday season, Thanksgiving through Christmas. And the market is growing. A new federal marketing order went in place for pecans, which is helping to market and promote not only pecans here in the United States, but overseas, globally as well. And then also as a snack food, you see pecans or peanuts in little bags at the store for convenience. They're hoping to push pecans to where it can be a more convenient food.
We're going to take our first break, and we're going to be back. I want to pick up on what we're talking about now and kind of move that both to the livestock industry and the plant industry about this whole growth and scientific things we're learning. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about all things agriculture, and we're talking about things in the plant world and the livestock world. Call a friend. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. Especially want to thank you for your input on this show each and every week. Your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com helps us in many ways because it helps us kind of guide the shows that we're looking at in the future because you tell us what you'd like to hear more about. It also lets us know what your thoughts are on the shows we have had on, and maybe we might need to expand on that a bit. I suggest that possibly one of those shows we might need to expand on is what we do with agriculture, which is kind of at the base of everything that happens in this area. And we're talking with Eileen Coite, who is the director of the Corporate Extension Service here in Sampson County. And we're also talking to Brad Hardison, who works in that area as a specialist extension agent in the area of horticulture and those things related to plants. The world of plants and animals always comes together somewhere, either in a wheat field with horses or cows, or in a cornfield as it relates to hogs, grain, and those kinds of things. When we look at that, and I'm going to kind of ask this question at a 20,000 foot level, when we look at that, is that balance good now, or does the balance get off occasionally? And specifically what brought this question to mind, Eileen, is I remember having a conversation with you when we had one of our recent hurricanes, and I forget which one it was. You actually had people from all over the state bringing in wheat and stuff so cows could have something to eat, and horses. It was that critical. So when it comes down to it, if these two worlds don't come together, we might have an issue.
That is true, especially in disaster type times. Yeah. We grow a lot of hay in Sampson County. I think at one time we were maybe number one in hay production. And a lot of that goes back to our our swine industry and our poultry industry that's so strong here. And so we have that land that we apply the waste, which is really fertilizer, that we put on that land and grows that grass, and then we harvest it for either grazing or harvest it for hay for those animals to eat in the wintertime. So, but whenever you have a hurricane come through and it drowns your field of grass, then you have, or maybe you can't get to the bales of hay that you need, whatever the situation is. Sometimes you need to bring that in, and thankfully we've had some very generous folks from the western part of our state and even out of state that have donated hay in times of need so we could feed our animals.
It's interesting. One of the things I've noticed again, as I oftentimes look at different things going on in ag, there seems to be quite a few more cattle in this area. A lot of times we don't think about beef cattle that much, but I've started noticing there's a lot of cattle I've seen in Sampson and surrounding counties that's being grown, and part of that I think is as a result of the fields that's being used for spray fields and that kind of thing. So where does that cattle industry go? I mean, you're kind of a big animal person in the sense of the process of that. You have the cows are sold, we've got excellent operations to handle chickens and swine and hogs, but is there anywhere processing here for cattle?
There's not, no. So the processing is mostly going to be out in the Midwest. So what we focus on in eastern North Carolina are what we call cow-calf operations. So the mama cows, and we raise those calves until it's time for them to go somewhere else and be grown on a feedlot and finished. We call it finishing them out. Put that weight on them until they're ready for harvesting. And but majority of that, other than we might have some operations that do some grass-fed, grass-finished beef, but for the most part, that's done in the Midwest.
Without getting too deep into that, and I always tell folks, if you get too deep and I don't understand it, then probably it's not a good thing. But is there a balance economically at some point in time? Does it become financially interesting to somebody to say, okay, we might need to put a processing plant for cattle somewhere in eastern North Carolina because the volume is such that we could justify it rather than shipping cattle out of state or something? Is that something that typically some kind of group with the scientific industry looks at and says feasibility study here, feasibility study there, now it's time to do that? Is that something that happens, or we're not even at the point of looking at that?
Well, if you think about it, JW, you got to look in the concept of how big we are in the poultry industry and the swine industry too. And so our cattle industry, particularly in eastern North Carolina, is as big as it is because of those other industries. But because they are already here and so big, the need for the corn, the soybean, we have to bring a lot of that in by rail from the Midwest to feed our poultry and our hogs. And so that's also what we would be feeding those cattle.
So you got to maintain balance.
We need even more of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we focus on growing them up until weaning age, and then they go west to be finished out where the corn is, and and where there's not as much. We know there's a lot of hogs in Iowa, but anyway, I think that has something to do with it, and.
Yeah, there's something I recall in my years at state. There's something called the scale of balance or something, where everything had to have a certain amount of equality before you could just shove something else in, and then it would destroy or throw everything else off balance.
Right.
I probably messed that up somewhere.
Yeah. And I'm sure our economics guys probably look at that a lot closer. And Mike could explain it a little better than I could, but I think that's what's going on there.
Brad, back to the world of plants and all things vegetation. I know you do a lot of stuff with turf, grass. For the average person out there, homeowner, I don't know, it might be pro at a golf course somewhere. What should they be thinking about this time of the year as we're looking at what appears to be maybe possibly a short winter, and maybe we've had warm weather throughout. Is there something that changes when you have a real warm winter with an early spring as opposed to the reverse that you look at with plants and that kind of thing?
There's a lot of things that's changing, especially with the weather. We hear climate change. Mm-hmm. Climate is changing. 2019 was the second warmest year on record. It looks like this year we're starting out the same way. We've had a lot of 70-degree days here. And what this is happening, there's a lot of plants have chilling hours that they need to reach. Fruit trees, nut trees, blueberry bushes. Those things has a certain amount of chilling hours that they have to be dormant in the wintertime, and they've reached those chilling hours. And now when they get a couple of days of 70-degree weather, it warms up, they're starting to say, hey, it's time to grow. With home lawns or with any type of turf grass, this warm weather is going to start having some of this Bermuda and centipede start greening up. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is, I can't forecast what's going to happen between now and April 15th, but I'm sure we're going to get some cold, freezing weather sometime between now and then. Any of your home lawns that green up right now, if it comes a freeze, especially with our warm season grass, it's going to die or have cold injury, things that are greened up. So that's one thing I would tell homeowners to be looking out for with their home lawns. Mm-hmm. If their grass starts greening up, and then we get a couple of cold spells and they go outside and they see some dead patches out in their yard, they're going to be thinking they've got a disease or they got something wrong with the grass, when in actuality it's nothing but cold injury is what's caused it. Mm-hmm. Other things they can be thinking about with their lawn right now is weed control. A lot of people don't think about weed control in February, but with our warm season grasses that we have, like our centipedes, our Bermudas, our St. Augustines, we need to be thinking about warm season weed control right now. Mm-hmm. And that is, they should be putting a pre-emergent out, I like to say around Valentine's Day, between Valentine's and March, put that pre-emergent herbicide out. And what that's going to do is prevent the weeds that are seed from germinating and growing up in the springtime. Now it's not going to do anything for the weeds that they see growing right now. So what they would need to be applying to their lawn for weeds that they can see right now is a post-emergent herbicide, something that's going to burn those weeds down selectively and not hurting their grass. We've got a lot of information that at the Extension Center. If people want to call, or they can email, they can contact me or our Extension Master Gardeners. We have a plant clinic. They take calls 3 times a week. People can call and leave a message and they'll get back with them. And they answer a lot of questions about lawns. So it's a good resource for people.
Two things that oftentimes comes up in conversations I have with people about lawns and so forth. And one of them deals with fire ants. And I might be getting an edge totally. I might need to get another agent in, but maybe you know a little bit about this. The fire ants. And the other thing that always comes up, and these are 2 critters. One is called a mole, and the other is called
a vole.
Yeah, it was vole. Yeah, it starts with a V. Yeah,
yep.
And I don't know if you can elaborate on that, kind of help folks a little bit understand what they can and can't do. I've even had people say, "Oh, with moles, they're animals. You can't touch them. They're protected or something." So help us understand what's going on with that.
Right. Well, fire ants. We'll talk about them first. Mm-hmm. Fire ants normally has 2 life cycles a year. They hatch out in spring. And all the winged ants, which are male ants and the queens, will fly up in the air, and they'll mate, and the queens will land, and then they'll make new mounds. That happens in springtime, May, early June. Then again, it'll happen in the fall in September and October. Going back to
let me stop you right there, and we're going to come back from this break. I want you to pick up on all this because I want you to have time to cover that because I will get questioned on it. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about fire ants. We're talking about moles and something called voles, and hopefully we'll cover that when we come back. Call a friend. Stay tuned.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. My name is J.W. Simmons. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're coming to you from Star Communications, Channel 16, each and every Tuesday at 2:30. Also, we're broadcast on WCLN Radio, simulcast there, that is, and also the Sampson Weekly newspaper, which is a summation. I would remind you, it is a summation. We don't cover all the points here simply because there's not enough pages in the paper to do that. We're talking with ag folks today, Eileen Coite and Brad Henderson. Brad, as we went off, we were talking about two things that people talk about a lot. And there seems to be some solution and some maybe not, but you just got into one of those, which was fire ants, and then we were going to move to moles and voles. I want to give you time to cover those before we got into another subject that we definitely want to get into before this show's over. So I'll give you a shot to pick up on that.
Well, we could talk about fire ants for a whole show.
We might do a semester on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we could. But back to the life cycle of fire ant, because it's important to understand the life cycle. They lay eggs and they breed in spring, May, and early June, and then again in the fall in September and October. So there's 2 life cycles in the year. What's interesting about last year, which we talked about it being one of the warmest years, is in my home lawn at Christmas, I was out with my son and I actually saw a mound hatching out at Christmas time. So that was a 3rd life cycle. I've actually talked to our entomologist at NC State, and he said with the warmer weather, we actually could here in North Carolina see a 3rd life cycle of fire ants. So that's not news I wanted to hear, but it's things that are happening. So the one thing about fire ants is everybody says, why can't we eradicate them? Why can't we get rid of them? And the reason why is because they are located everywhere in the environment. They're in forests, they're in fields, they're in home lawns, pastures. If you can name a place, there's a fire ant mound somewhere near there. So really, we can't treat those forests and we can't treat some of those pastures and some of those crop
So
lands.
eradication is not a question. You just can't do it.
That's right. So there's a quarantine line. And I remember back when I was working for the Department of Agriculture back in the late 80s and early 90s, that quarantine line was south of Sampson County. Well, right now in Sampson County, the quarantine line is up in the mountains of North Carolina and up into Virginia. So they are moving westward and northward.
So climate change has an impact on that as well?
Well, I'm not sure if I would say climate change, but they are getting more acclimated to the cold weather here because, you know, they originally came into Louisiana from South America. They are a tropical pest, but they're getting more acclimated to our weather and the environment that's here. And the thing about fire ants, they will dig their mound and go as deep as the water table. So if the water table, which right now the water table is going to be fairly shallow in the ground with all the rain that we've seen, but in dry times, you know, they'll dig down 8-10 feet to the water table. So that's how deep some of those mounds
There's
can
a lot
be.
of shallow wells that's 10-15 feet deep in Sampson County.
That's right. But we get in a droughty time in the summertime, they'll dig down and then you treat those mounds and you wonder why you've not killed them all. And it's because the toxic can't get all the way down to where that queen is. And when we talk about treating fire ants, the idea is not to eradicate them, but to manage the fire ant. And the way we tell people, and the research says that we should be managing fire ants in the home lawn, or in the home landscape, is to use the 2-step method, and that is use a bait and then come back with a mound drench. And a lot of these products, when you see them on the shelf of your local store, are hard to determine which is which. A lot of people use the bait in a way they should be using the mound drench, and then a lot of people use the mound drench in the way they should be using the bait. So they're misapplying the product.
That would be me. I'm sure I've done both of those.
Right. When I have a fire ant class at the extension office, or I've had fire ant classes here at the library, a lot of people said, wow, we didn't know how to actually use the product, and you've showed us how to use it, and it helps in control. So the first thing you need to do is make sure those ants using a bait with the first step is using the bait as a product that they're going to go out and forage and eat and come back and feed the brood and feed the queen. So the first thing those ants need to be doing is foraging. So I would take a small bag of Lay's potato chips, and I would go to my fire ant mounds, and I would sprinkle some in a 2-foot radius circle around it, late evening or early morning. In 30 minutes, I'll come back to that mound. If there's ants on those potato chips foraging, I know those ants are foraging and that a bait will work. Then I'll take my bait and I will apply the recommended rate on the bag, which is usually a couple of tablespoons, and I will apply it in that 2-foot diameter circle around the mound. Now, I will not disturb the mound. A lot of people like to kick the mound first. A lot of people will disturb the mound to begin with. You don't want to disturb the mound. Apply that bait in a 2-foot circle around the mound, and in 7 or 10 days, that can normally do away with that mound. For troublesome mounds, and the reason some mounds are troublesome is some mounds have up to 500,000 ants in them, and some mounds have up to 12 queens in a mound. So if you don't kill all 12 of those queens in that one mound,
I thought one queen was trouble. We're talking 12.
Yeah, there can be up to 12 in a mound, and if you don't kill all 12,
Wow.
then you've not killed that mound. So then what you want to do is find those mounds that's not dead, that still has activity in them, and use a mound drench. And they could be called mound destroyer, mound killer, mound drench.
That's more like the dust stuff
That's
that
right.
you get.
That's right. And what you need to do is apply it to the mound at any time. Ants don't have to be foraging because they're not eating it. So you apply it to the mound at any time, and then you want to take about 2 gallons of water and slowly, gently water that toxicant into the mound so it will filter down. You know, we talked about they're going to be as deep as the water table. So
I never imagined 8-10 feet deep.
Right.
That's amazing.
And some are even deeper than that. I've seen some of these castings that people have made of fire ants mounds that's 17 feet deep.
Wow.
So they're going to be as deep as the water table. That's where they get their moisture from. That's where they get their drinking water from, is the water table. So anyhow, gently water that mound drench into the mound so that toxicant will get down and filter down through the mound, and then you should kill that mound with the bait and with the mound drench. That should take care of those mounds. Now, if you go out in your landscape and it looks like a minefield with fire ants, there is some chemical control that's out there. One product that homeowners can use is called bifenthrin, and it's sold in some of these local home centers. And you can either spot treat mounds with it, or you can spray your entire yard with it and help you get rid of fire ants. And this will control your fire ants. It depends on what time you do it during the year. Following the 2-step method or the chemical control should control your fire ants up until the next hatch. Because if your neighbors aren't using fire ant management practices,
They're coming.
when those queens hatch out and mate and fly out, a queen can fly up to 12 miles.
Wow.
So it doesn't have to be your neighbors. It could be people.
I should have suspected that.
Right.
I mean, a queen can go wherever she
Yeah, up to 12 miles. And it could be further depending on what type of day of it, what it is, windy,
Us
if there's
women are tough.
updraft.
I'm serious.
Typically, they're not going to fly that far.
But they have the potential.
But they have the potential. So it could be coming from a mile or 2 away, or the forest, or the woods, or the fields next to you where those ants come out. And then the queen will land in your yard, and then she'll dig a mound, she'll start laying eggs. And once she starts laying eggs, she'll lay up to 500,000 eggs, and it'll start all over.
I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do, to let's cover maybe a minute to do something on the moles. And I want to say to folks listening today or watching the show, you've already opened another door here. I can see a whole show on fire ants. I can see a whole show on
pests
critters and pests
yeah.
in your lawn, or in your yard, depending on whether you're in the city or the country. But that's a whole big show, because I had never given a thought the complexity, much less 8-10 feet down. 17 is unbelievable. But I figured these, if you hit them, like a lot of people, you think if you put a little bit of gas on them and strike a match, it's over with. Not a good idea, right? Not a good.
Hey, there's a lot of other home ideas that are not good ideas.
I can imagine. So about moles, when we're looking at moles and you see all those little things in the yard and they're all over everywhere under your grass, and then all of a sudden you see your plants kind of tip over. Somebody said that's a vole. Give us the quick and easy on that. 60 seconds.
Quick and easy on that is mole and voles are two different creatures. Moles are meat eaters. The mole starts with M, mole, meat eaters. Okay. So they eat grubs and worms that's in your lawn. Voles is a field mouse, basically, is what they are. It's a small field mouse. And the mole used to be a protected species. There still is a protected species called the star-nosed mole, and it is still protected, but they're not around. In 2016, the state started allowing poisoning or toxicants to be used to control moles in your yard. So any product that has warfarin, if you've got a heart condition, you may be taking a product that has warfarin in it. The mole cannot metabolize that warfarin, and it will terminate their life. So that's one product. Use a product that has warfarin in it. For the vole, the quick, easy on the vole is there is vole traps that are on the market. You can search up vole control and find those traps on the market. They are a little more difficult to control because you have to find out where they're feeding and set the traps up and put the toxin out, just like a rat poisoning would be, and that's how you control the voles.
Well, either one of these things, though, we're talking major infestation. If they end up in your lawn or in your yard, this is a major issue, especially because oftentimes, as you probably know, conservatively, oftentimes folks will have $1,500, $15,000 to $30,000 on a loan easily, right. and this is a major issue. So I'd love to get you back at some point in time and talk about that.
Be great.
So we're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about a lot of issues and touching on some that I'm sure I'll be looking at some emails or contacts in the community to expand on, and fire ants and moles and voles is one of those. We'll be back in a moment and talk about some
To
things.
get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. Very exciting show. We've got into a lot of subjects in this conversation that I'm sure you're interested in and expanding your knowledge on, particularly as it relates to fire ants and moles and voles and other things. And you can get up with Brad Hardison at 592-7161. That's 910-592-7161. That's Corporate Extension right here in Sampson County. We're very fortunate to have you guys here, and Eileen Coite, director. Brad, it sounds like you do a lot of things, not only turf, but moles, voles, whatever, and you do classes in that. So that 592-7161 number can also get them information on when those classes are going to be taught.
That's right. I do a Friends of Horticulture series that meets once a month. We do various topics: pecan trees, spring lawn care, growing vegetables from seed, landscaping plants, harvesting rainwater off the top of your house.
Wow.
Attracting pollinators, soil analysis. So there's a lot of classes that I teach out there. And then there's also the Extension Master Gardeners for people that want to learn more and that has time and want to volunteer at the Extension office. They can become Extension Master Gardener volunteers. And like I said earlier, if I'm not at the office or I'm not in or some of our home calls, they go to our Extension Master Gardener volunteers that man a plant clinic there at the office, and they answer a lot of those home.
That's a great group of people too.
Yeah,
Great group of people. I know about all of them, I think, so they're excellent folks.
Right, so those are two opportunities to learn more at the Extension Center.
Okay, there's something coming up Saturday, March 21st, and it's a pretty big deal. And I think, Brad, you were quoted as saying that you would like to see the program grow. Over the past years, you've said, I'd love to see this program grow and let's see it get bigger. And it's reached the point, Eileen, that the location it was being held at, which was the Corporate Extension office, for it to continue to grow bigger, it had to be moved. And it's called Ag Day. What in the world is going on? Because this Ag Day coming up the 21st of March is going to blow the walls out compared to what was been going on in the past. Tell us about it.
Yes. Well, Ag Day has been going on since before Brad and I, either one of us, worked at Extension here, and we have it every other year. And yes, it was at the Cooperative Extension Center on the outside and on the inside. I tell people, think about anytime you've gone to a county fair, or maybe even the state fair, and then squeeze all that into one day. And so our goal is to educate, to show awareness and appreciation for agriculture in the largest ag county in the state. So it's there for folks to come together that know about agriculture, and then folks that maybe don't know so much.
Or people that think they do know and they really don't know.
Right. There's just so many opportunities to learn, and just to put the spotlight on what keeps Sampson County going. It's just an amazing place, and we're going to have all kinds of neat activities. One thing that we're going to do this year that we've never done to this magnitude before is we're even going to have entertainment. So we're going to have a couple of bands playing on the stage, and then in between those bands we're going to have a comedian, Mr. Jerry Carroll from Johnston County is going to do a show. So we're going to have the Grandpas will be one band, a bluegrass band will be playing, and then the Pizzazz Band will be the other one. So
thanks to the Tourism Bureau.
Thanks to the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
So this is a huge partnership of a lot of folks making this happen.
Absolutely. So the CVB, the Chamber, the Agri-Expo Center themselves are involved. We've got some tremendous sponsorship, and some of our sponsors are not only providing the sponsorship, but are going to be there on site to help out with activities. So there's a lot going on.
Well, Brad, when I started looking at this, and we started back some months ago talking about having it at the Civic Center, it started kind of developing into that event every year that historically I recall having a county fair. And now it's kind of like it's coming back. We've got some things that are very important that people will be looking at. I know you were excited to see this happen, particularly in that you could show and have some vendors there and other things that some of the things we talked about today, people could actually see and better understand.
That's right. As Eileen said, we're the largest ag county in the state, almost $1.3 billion. About 70% of our employees in the county is related somehow to agriculture, whether they know it or not. And growing up in this ag county and in ag, there is a huge disconnect between the young generations and agriculture in the county. A lot of people don't know where their food comes from. They ride by crops in the field every day and they don't know what those crops are. They don't know how it's feeding them. People think they get their groceries from the grocery store, and it comes from the back of the grocery store. So this is a way that we can educate people and help break that disconnect and bring people back to local agriculture, where food is grown where you live. And when I was growing up, the Ag Expo was here in Clinton, and I look forward to that every year, coming down here to the Expo, and it kind of faded out and it's not held anymore. And
we had that at a tobacco warehouse.
Yes, it was.
I remember that, yeah.
And I remember Sky 5 flying in one time to it. And
it's a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And I see this event not replacing the Ag Expo, but at least having the vendors, the booths, talking to everybody in the county about agriculture, and just educating the people in the county about agriculture. And if we want everybody to come out, whether you're a farmer, whether you don't know anything about farming, whether you're a teacher, whether you work at the grocery store, I mean, it doesn't matter. We want everybody to come out. We want as many local vendors as we can to come out.
Speaking of vendors, one of the things that it struck me, and you just said historically looking back at the ag things we did at the warehouses and stuff, this is an ideal time for people that sell cars, trucks, and other things. If you want to highlight your newest pickup truck or what have you, lawnmowers, whatever, they could be a vendor, put that equipment there, and potentially we're looking for what, 900 to 1,200 people maybe?
Maybe more than that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's where we were at when we decided to move.
That's kind of a low end, so it could go to 2,000.
Yeah, I'm just hoping.
Very optimistic.
Yeah, very optimistic.
We have a good day and so forth.
That's right.
You could have that many people there. So for folks to be vendors, what do they need to do? Do they need to call the 592-717-6?
They can call. They can go to our website. So our website is sampson.ces.ncsu for NC State University.edu. So they can go to that website, and on the left side of the page that we have a tab that is just for Sampson Ag Day. They can click on that, and then our forms are listed there. If someone wants to be a vendor, wants to be a sponsor, we're looking for some more food vendors. So if you have maybe a food truck, want to come out, especially with the entertainment that's going to be there this year, there'll be a lot of folks there coming for all the activities. But you know,
got to have funnel cake somewhere with this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a must. And when I look at it, the bigger picture of this thing, this is a step forward. So it's also kind of planting the seed for what maybe will come the next time around. So if we get good feedback and folks really come out and participate, this could be the key event for Sampson and surrounding counties.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, this is a learning process for us moving to the Expo Center. There's a lot of behind the work that goes into it, tracking down these vendors, getting their vendor forms, getting them assigned a location, getting them power if they need power. So I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. We're having some added expenses. We're doing the pipe and drape there this year. And
the facility, the cost of using the facility, where we didn't have that when we were at home at our place.
Right. So this is a learning experience for us. And I hope we do things well. I think we will do things well this year, but it's going to be a learning experience for us to build for the future. I mean, we're doing transportation, shuttle service this year. They're going to be parking over in the, once the parking lots there are full, they'll be parking over at the Roses parking lot, and we can be shuttling people back and forth.
I think it's probably going to be one of the biggest coordinated events with multiple agencies here in the county, the police department and recreation and other people who's participating in this. And it goes back to what you said, Brad. It just seems to me it's proving the point that everything somehow is connected to ag. You know, it doesn't matter if, as you just pointed out, if it's a lawnmower, it's connected to ag. If it's something to do with a truck, it's connected to ag. If you're driving, food is connected to ag. If you're driving vehicles, now we've even got into the whole world now of looking at alternative energy sources and those kinds of things. And our ag industry has stepped up aggressively in doing some things with that as it relates to gases and capturing gas at livestock facilities and those kinds of things. I had a conversation with some folks with Smithfield Foods and talking about how they could pipe that into the pipeline. So this day, and folks, again, I'm going to give them that phone number. It's 592-717-7161. Just call that number. That's simple to do.
Sure.
Or they can do the Sampson CEC.
CES.
CES.
Yep.
and then it's ncsu.edu.
Correct.
And that's
Easier thing to do would just be Google Sampson extension,
It'll come up.
and you'll be able to pull it up.
That'll
And
probably,
we-
because they
and
ain't going to
we-
remember that.
That's right.
Yeah.
We also have a Facebook page. So if you put in North Carolina Cooperative Extension Sampson County, if you're on Facebook, we also have, we're keeping that updated too. So there's access, that'll link you into the website.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being with us today and encourage people to participate in this event. It's something you don't want to miss, and you can be prepared for the next time because it's going to be even bigger. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today. As always, we'd like to tell you to keep us in touch through weshouldknowedu.com. That site is for you to reach us, and as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.